Okay, it's my pleasure to start this session dedicated to defense industry. I would like, we kindly ask Mr. Demir to allow two of our speakers to speak first because General Willers has to catch the plane and Minister Mediu as a chairman of the Republican Party of Albania to attend the meeting before the parliamentary elections. Now I would like to introduce Major General Robert Wheeler, who is currently serving as a staff of the Secretary of Defense as a Deputy Chief Information Officer for Command, Control, Communications and Computers, so-called CFO. He has served a number of duties at the U.S. Air Force. Also, he has been a senior military advisor of U.S. mission to Organization for Security and Cooperation of Europe. General Wheeler has been decorated with a number of medals. General Wheeler, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's my honor to be here, and I thank you for that very fine introduction. I'll make a couple of comments short just because I'm here at the airport and the time's changed, but I'll stay on here for the 30 minutes of that particular piece. First off, I'd just like to say that this is the perfect venue to talk about some of the future needs that all of our countries are going to have as we see the face of combat operations changing here dramatically over the next few years. In the past, as a group, regional cooperation was extraordinarily important by virtue of the fact that we had to learn to fight together in the ways of combined arms of the past. We did the same when it was counterinsurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I look at this now as we move towards more of a Cold War type scenario, especially in the European region with Russia and China, as something of a change in the way we do warfare. And that regional cooperation will be even more important than it ever has been in the previous 30 plus years. So the ideas of going to all domain operations here, multi-domain operations, depending upon the term you use, is going to require a complete change in equipment and a complete change in the way we do CONOPS. If we don't have that cooperation, we're not going to be able to fight together as a team. So that regional cooperation, the way we think about things, whether it's command and control, the way our people are trained, the way they think through things, is absolutely going to be imperative, far more than I would argue in the last 30 years. So as we move ahead, thinking about how combat's going to be waged potentially in Europe and other places, it's going to drive us to have a much more requirements for us to have that cooperation that has been so important in the past. I hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, General Wheeler. Now I would like to invite to speak Mr. Fatmir Mediu. Fatmir Mediu is chairman of the Republican Party of Albania, and he served as a Minister of Defense and Minister of Environment of Albania. He was 4 terms, consecutive terms, member of Albanian Party, and he's a known speaker to different international conferences. My friend Fatmir, the floor is yours.
Zoran, my friend, thank you very much. I do appreciate you are moderating this, and thank you once more for taking that place. And I'm so happy to be in the panel with distinguished and very great people like I have my good friend General Wheeler just spoke, and I'm a little bit, speechless after he speaks, but General Wald is there and also the other members of this panel. Let me just say from the very beginning, that's my belief that security is not cheap and freedom is not for sale. And we should think very strongly about what we do. And interoperability is the backbone of success in any operation, military operation. Defense industry need to support nations to invest in interoperability, cutting edge and cost-effective equipment. But as technology grows more expensive and defense budgets are under pressure, especially in this situation of COVID-19 pandemic, there are key capabilities which many allies can only obtain if they work together to develop and acquire them. I'm speaking at least about, the Balkan countries, which are small countries. Cooperation should cover, in my belief, a wide range to address the most critical capability requirements, which will also meet our needs for facing security challenges. And we have now new challenges like cyber security, 5G, ballistic missile defense, joint intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, just naming a few of them. Developing and procuring capabilities through multinational and regional cooperation helps to generate economies of scale, reduce cost, and delivers interoperability, especially, as I mentioned, in small countries. Balkan countries, in my belief, should consider spending in defense smartly, working together. And I believe it's very important that we should try to recognize some of the security strategies in defense in the Balkans to work together, because most of the Balkan countries are NATO countries, are willing to become NATO countries. So we have no barriers to work together, and that's very important. The only way we can attract some of military industries from United States, from Turkey, and from Europe is if we work together. And also, I think we should work on regional capabilities, maintenance, regional interoperability, and planning and budgeting regionally. To be more concrete, I will go, we should identify what are security threats that we are facing. Defense industry should meet, secondly, the needs of our countries to face security threats. Regional approach for Balkan countries is more cost-effective and more money-wise. Our countries should focus on increasing operation capabilities in order to be effective NATO members. 5, as saying goes, I always go especially on defense spendings. I buy expensive because I do not have money to buy cheap, because we are used to get cheap things and they become more costly. Some countries are trying to fish in our countries in the sense of bringing some used equipments, which become much more expensive because of maintenance. So we should be very carefully thinking about maintenance, spare parts, and cost circle, life circle. And together we can work not just buying the equipments, but also I believe it's important to maintain this, and that's a very important part. And we want to see NATO countries, as NATO countries, to look on our capabilities and interoperability, and try to use NATO as a vehicle to bring us together to the understanding what we should do. Some other main concerns are raising as that we should be very careful, especially, as I mentioned, cybersecurity as well as 5G. And I think NATO should take a lead on these very important threats and challenges and developments and opportunities, because I think it should organize in somehow a relation among NATO countries, how we can deal with this situation. And I think it's very important the way they impact our, life, because I think cybersecurity, 5G, is directly involved on, interoperability, is in operation capabilities, and also in securing our, work together, securing our countries as well. Let me just go to some of what General Wheeler mentioned about new threats and new actors in place. I believe soon enough, we are already seeing that we are going to see a bipolar world. And this bipolar world, one strong center is United States, that we are part of the alliance with them, working with them. The other one is going to be China. And then we should focus very, very smartly the way that we can deal with some of the threats, or some ways that are trying to approach our countries that in long term might create issues on our security. Like I mentioned 5G, but in the Balkans, geopolitics is becoming very complex, always has been complex. We've been smart enough to confuse the others and ourselves many times. But what I want to say is Russia is becoming very aggressive. On the other hand, China with those economic investments, trying to take control on the economy and politics and affect our, long-term security. So we should be very, very, smart on that. We have other issues in the region like radicalization, terrorism, dormant ethnic conflicts. So we should see this, how we can really face these challenges together. And I believe that we are in a time that we should use our relation, especially I think Turkey has a very, very important role to play, has one of the strongest army, has one of the strongest military industry, and we should find a way to work with US, with EU and Turkey. For us, it's hard to get in between to see how this competition goes. But as we are NATO country, I think we should try to work together, bring NATO in our table and trying to focus how we spend the money. Because sometimes it's not important just to get to the 2% of the GDP. It's important how we spend the money, how we spend for the defense. And the challenges are not just pure military challenges right now, are very hybrid. And in this context, I think we should call a more organized region to be more organized in relation with our allies, and especially getting the support and help from NATO. I know that one of the issues right now is also the discussion about security autonomy of Europe. Is that the time? Is that workable? Our countries are looking to get into EU, but I think as we are in NATO right now, as we are working in NATO, we should focus on trying to get the best out of the alliance that we are part. And I think this alliance has been in place for 70 years, has proved itself to be the best one. And I think we should leave behind some of the differences. And I take a note from what Secretary General said. Europe cannot face things alone, as America cannot face things alone. North Atlantic Alliance is very, very important to help our security, but also we should be smart how we can really cope and trying to be part of this alliance, not just to have the name, but also to be part of the decision, but to be part of the international probability and to do our best to secure, the world and our countries as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fatmir, for your concise statement. And now I would like, first I would like to express our appreciation to Dr. Demir that allow our two speakers to speak. And now we have our keynote speaker, Dr. Demir. He has graduated from Technical University of Istanbul. As well, he has a master's degree and a PhD degree education in the United States. He has been a professor to different universities, including in Turkey, as well as he served as a deputy chairman, deputy CEO of Turkish Airlines. In 2014, Mr. Demir started to serve as a president of defense industry of Turkey. Mr. Demir, the floor is yours.
Hello, esteemed Minister, dear participants. Let me begin with congratulating all women that change the world and make it habitable, livable planet and bring hope for all humanity. Today is March 8th, International Women's Day, a precious day, a global reminder that we all should believe in the power of women in transforming the world and surviving on this planet for a better future. Generally speaking, surviving in a world of nation states in the context of globalized world requires an effective and productive use of national power, however you define it. In a highly globalized world, in an interconnected globe, a nation needs to have a strong self-esteem, local strength, a high respect for human rights, a firm commitment to peace, and stability for both self and others. Otherwise, failure or falling behind is a guaranteed outcome or result not only for that nation, but also for all those who are in one way or another in relation with that one. So what are all these mean? We can name this as national strength. This is a highly discussed theme in hundreds of different areas, from academia to philosophy, and I believe that discussion will continue on this theme. So it will be impossible to even summarize main paths here in a short presentation. Therefore, I like to focus more on what constitutes national strength, or in other words, what are the main elements of what is known as national strength. Human resources is the first and main element. Without such an element, all subsequent discussions are useless or obsolete. Economy, military, and technology are three other elements that have forming, structuring effect on national strength. You may, depending on your focus, enumerate or reduce the number of these elements. But what is clear is that technology or technological power is an element that provides a ground, a fruitful one, or lay the ground for developing in virtually all other elements. One can say it is a base for all transformations in other areas or elements that constitute national strength. With all these in mind, as Presidency of Defense Industry of Turkey, is subsequent years, we have considerably increased the resources allocated to R&D and technology investments. Defense, in a broad sense, with all its connotations and meaning, is a matter or theme of technology prior to be a question related with military or anything else. So the priority we give to R&D and technology will continue, creating a positive environment conducive to increase quality of life in Turkey, or competitiveness of Turkey in an international market requires enhancing our capacity for science, technology, and innovation. This is the path we have taken. As defense is a matter of technology, defense industry is one of the vital implementation areas for technology developments. It is a highly competitive field, and there has always been quite hard competition between nations and groups in this area. Exports, likewise in this industry, are high technology exports, and those countries that are powerful in depth and complexity of technology have a strategic competitive advantage. What is vital at this point is to create an environment that consists chains of relationships or conducive to produce such chains that enhance strategic competitive advantage. As Presidency of Defense Industries of Turkey, our aim is provide the systems, platforms, and products needed by our security forces and meet these needs with domestic and local resources. In doing so, alongside making huge investment to create or support strong industrial base, we also, even on a daily basis, closely and carefully follow technologies and trends regarding the future of operational environment. From day one, I personally push not only all my colleagues and my office, but also all relevant departments and units related to defense industry in one way or another, such as universities, think tanks, youth student clubs, ministries, and so on, to create the environment and to realize that outcome. Our work on future defense industry trends such as unmanned technologies, laser and electromagnetic weapon systems, cyber security, and space and satellite technologies, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, robotics, and interdependency, intercommunication continue at full speed. As of 2021, any news that you read and come across about Turkish defense industry is a product of such determination. Dear participants, small, cost-efficient, autonomous, and high-velocity systems. These are four words or concepts that characterize systems in making in defense fields of military or indeed in many different fields. Instead of manned systems, nations are looking for unmanned, autonomous, small, efficient, interconnected, and systems and game-changing technologies and tactics. As Turkish defense industry, we have a great success story in achieving and producing such systems with our local and domestic sources. This fact has been stated not only by us, but recognized by many different figures from different countries, and there has been many different occasions in which Turkish products has been referred as examples of such achievements. We can easily say that we are among the leading countries in the world with the breakthroughs we recently created in the field of defense industry. It is not simply a coincidence that there are 7 Turkish companies in the top 100 list of defense companies in the world. Dear participants, it is beyond doubt that the military doctrines and instruments will undergo or currently is undergoing significant changes in this period, when the use of space as a battlefield is on the agenda. Space assets that provide communications, intelligence, surveillance, and navigation capabilities will play an increasingly important role in the military operations, or more than that in the future. So, in future technology of the world will be strongly depending on these capabilities. Space studies are basically pioneering subject in the civilian field, so as defense industry, we are not at the center or forefront in the field, naturally. But setting aside military aspect, however, defense industry companies in Turkey, like many in the other parts of the world, will undertake a significant part of their work with their knowledge and experience in this field. I believe that their capacity and capabilities, defense firms and industry in general, will provide the highest contribution to the works conducted with the coordination of Turkish Space Agency with the scope of our country's space program disclosed recently. As defense industry sector, our aim is to be the biggest supporter of our country in space travel, and to ensure that the works are completed in the fastest time with our knowledge on related technologies. We, with all stakeholders in our country, will continue to progress with steady steps to follow the process and production of the new technologies with our vision. Our vision is Turkey as global power to serve peace and stability in the region and in the international area. So I have a firm belief that no nation will be safe and secure unless this safety and security in its nation and neighbors and the region is safe. So we are all dependent on each other. So establishing a better future will depend on increasing collaboration in defense and defense industry area to serve the peace and stability. I express my thanks and I regard to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Demir. Thank you for your excellent expose, giving us a view of where is the state of the defense industry today, but also giving us a vision for the future, where the biggest challenges and development of the defense industry. Now, I would like to invite to speak Lady Olga Maitland. She is well-known campaigner of defense and foreign affairs. Lady Maitland is former member of UK Parliament, and she served in different committees during her term in the UK Parliament. She is a president of Defense and Security Forum. Lady, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, thank you very much indeed for your warm welcome. I feel as if I'm back amongst friends, which it always is the case when I'm in Istanbul. I was very interested with the remarks made by my previous speakers, and I certainly endorse the whole concept of increased cooperation. I noticed that they all touched upon the use of cyber as a threat. And I thought I would just address my few remarks in how do we turn technology into what I would call battlefield brawn. Now, my remarks will be made from a United Kingdom perspective, but I feel there is common ground with all of us. There is a serious debate in the UK about the future style of modern armed forces. There are those who, for historic yes, and even sentimental reasons, hang on to the notion that a modern defense must be based on heavy artillery and main battle tanks. Well, yes, they do have a role, but the time has come to harness new technologies to match new threats, and the balance has changed. So we have to be much more agile, and we have to be fit for purpose. And in the next month, the British government will spell out in detail what this means. Of all the domains of defense today, sea, land, air, space, cyber is the one which has now come up the agenda and is of a real concern. Cyber threats and protection is the most recent and least understood threat. It is invisible, but deeply dangerous. And already the British government have indicated that it will be allocating a much larger share of the defense budget to cyber defense, hence setting up a Defense Ministry department focused purely on science and technology. So what is important to grasp is that cyber attacks can cause physical damage and on a very large scale. And in causing physical damage, they can kill people. Cyber war is a real war. It has the real means to disrupt air defense networks, as we have seen when Israel used a cyber attack to disrupt Syrian air defense networks as part of an airstrike against an alleged Syrian nuclear facility. Another example, the Stuxnet computer worm inflicted physical damage on more than 900 uranium centrifuges in Iran. And in 2014, a cyber attack manipulated and disrupted the control systems of a German steel plant, resulting in massive damage to a blast furnace. Don't forget that cyber attacks can shut down. Sorry about that, gentlemen. Don't forget that cyber attacks can shut down electrical networks, wide swathes of the economy and national infrastructure. Electrical trains cannot run. Financial services will be disrupted and closed down. Civilian telecommunications can be seriously disrupted. Hospitals crippled. Patients die, and so goes on. It should now be recognized that the military potential of cyber warfare is very real. An entire country can be taken down. Cyber warfare is an ideal weapon for some. It has a global range and can inflict potentially devastating physical damage and loss of life. And yet, the source is invisible. This is where international cooperation between trusted allies is key. We cannot succeed alone. Collaboration is critical. We need to work with international partners in a targeted and structured way to deliver strong mutual benefit and protection. We are living in a time of unprecedented change. Science and technology are developing and proliferating faster than ever before and have become the new theatres of international competition. Terrorist and non-state actors have emerged alongside traditional threats to a point where collaboration will be the key to a safer world. And this is particularly important to smaller countries, as my colleagues have pointed out. It is now obvious that the military potential of a cyber warfare is there and certain, and we have no choice but to face up to it. And my apologies for the disruption of the phone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lady, for your excellent presentation and speaking about new threats, especially cyber. Now, I would like to give the floor to Ambassador Quasi. Ambassador served his career diplomat with a lot of experience before assuming his duty at Ankara. He served as ambassador of Pakistan to Hungary as well. He was accredited to Montenegro. He served also as a joint secretary in the Prime Minister's office. And in his wide experience in diplomatic service, he has different positions in different missions, including Geneva, New Delhi, and Washington. By the way, we served in Geneva the same period when we were young diplomats. And then when I served in Washington also from 2007 and 2014, we were together. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a privilege, in fact, to be sitting on this eminent panel. I don't think I'll be able to contribute much, but it is certain that I will definitely benefit from the knowledge and wisdom on display here. I will also not try to address directly the specifics or the technical aspects of the defense industry, for which I'm not really equipped to speak on, but to try to probe the issue of why the uncertainty, which is the theme of this conference, and how it has come about, and how it impacts the defense regional arrangements, and what we can do about it. So, in the first part of my remarks, I invite your attention to the concept of system or order. If we are talking about uncertainty today, it means there is a problem with the international system or order. Very broadly, what is international order? Very broadly, it is the schema governing the behavior of actors internationally. A sustainable and legitimate order is relatively just. Just orders are long-lived and unjust ones not so. Also, the more exceptions there are to the rules of an order, the weaker and less legitimate that order will be. Combining this definition or this brief description of the order, then we take a step and go to the second element of our analysis, and is to look at the evolution of humanity along three broadly parallel streams: technological, which is the subject of today's discussion, economic production, and socio-political. And we see a dichotomy in these, a contradiction in these. In terms of technology, there is clear linear and ascending progression from stone to bronze to steel to steam to cyber, and so on. In terms of economics or production, the graph is also broadly linear and directed upwards. Almost every generation, barring calamities such as Black Death or global wars, has produced more than the preceding generation. However, and this is the weakness, and this is the result of this weakness that we're sitting here today. However, when we look at the third stream of human development, socio-political, it does not show a steady linear progression to a better human being or a better political behavior with every succeeding generation. Just to give an example, the Holocaust occurred in modern times with modern industrial methods helping it along. The final element of this analysis is transition. An order or a system in transition is vulnerable. It is off balance and is looking for a new center of gravity. Right now, the world we are confronting is a world with multiple transitions underway. The pace of technological change is unprecedented. Previous speakers have spoken about it. In warfare, this means more means of killing at more affordable rates. In economic terms, the pace is again quite fast. However, there is a catch here. The rich are getting richer, individually and nationally, and the poor poorer. This detracts from the legitimacy of the prevailing order. Finally, in political terms, we are seeing a transition in global leadership. A challenger is rising to confront the reigning champion. And to cap it all, as if this was not enough, we are in the midst of a pandemic. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have? It's a perfect storm of uncertainty. We have an order whose legitimacy is under question by a number of actors. Global political and economic inequality are increasing. The reigning champion is facing a challenger and seeking allies to bolster its position. And some of these allies, with regional aspirations of their own, will only support the current system if they can benefit from it but are not subject to its rules. They are thus seeking exceptions and exemptions, which is the surest way to undermine an already shaky order. Now let us combine this analysis, such as it is, to the defense industry. Yesterday's fiction is today's reality. We are witnessing a mushrooming of disruptive technologies with the potential to fundamentally alter the very construct of regional security and strategic stability. some capabilities, and Lady Maitland has spoken about it at great length. For instance, the cyber domain can be deployed to one's advantage at a very low cost. The human being has been taken out of the loop, decision-making loop in many of the armament systems. This reduces, and this is an incentive for the aggressor because he does not stand to lose manpower while conducting acts of aggression. So an order in flux, its legitimacy under question, undergoing a transition, undermined by exceptions, is not the right environment to deal with this explosion of affordable and available military technologies. The result is that the threshold for conflict has been lowered just when the system or order can least afford or sustain it. The fourth industrial revolution is eliminating boundaries between the physical, digital, and biological worlds. There's a fusion of advances in artificial intelligence, electromagnetic warfare, robotics, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, genetic engineering. We are already hearing talk of super soldiers, quantum computing, and other technologies. In this increasing chaotic world, where unfortunately collective security has taken a back seat, countries are now being forced to look on and draw upon their own resources and look towards themselves. Turkey is a great example, and Mr. Damir has spoken very eloquently about how Turkey has gone about it and why it has gone about it. It has worked wonders in this regard and holds lessons for others. Despite daunting odds, including sanctions, the Turkish defense industry has invested in R&D of foundational technologies to bolster its self-reliance. Today, as Mr. Damir also said, there are 7 Turkish companies in the top 100 global defense producers. Turkish armed drones are the envy of the world. On our side of the world, aware of the imperfections of the system, aware of the biases of the prevailing order in favor of certain countries, Pakistan also has gone Turkey's way. It is, therefore, also natural that these 2 countries should cooperate. The two, which are medium-sized countries in turbulent neighborhoods, whose security needs are either ignored or misunderstood, or on occasion deliberately overridden with embargoes and sanctions, are complementing each other's security, all in an open and transparent manner. They are thus pointing the way for others. In conclusion, I would only like to say that we should all have a vested interest in the prevailing order. But for it to survive, it must take everybody on board. It must try to become more just, grant fewer exceptions, and hold violators, big or small, friend or foe, to account. This is where diplomats and statesmen need to step forward and take the center stage. They need to make this happen. Because if they fail, then unfortunately, it will be the soldiers who will be called upon to settle disputes. And instead of the diplomats and the statesmen talking, it will be the guns that will do the talking, and nobody gains from it and nobody wins from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for giving us a joint picture of foreign policy, defense policy, as well new technologies and how they interact, and the importance of all of them together in these uncertain periods. Now, I would like to give a floor to Erdem Aykay. He is CEO of Koçkus Holding. Mr. Aykay is a very experienced manager, project director who demonstrated his history working in automotive industry, as well as skilled operational manager, new investment setups, and so on. Mr. Aykay, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me to switch to Turkish as we have a simultaneous translation. Ben de bir miktar savunma sanayi tarafından konuyu değerlendirmek istiyorum.
I would like to evaluate this situation from the defense industry. As you know, the countries are allocating the majority of their budgets for the R&D in the defense industry. And the companies like us are also allocating a lot of money for the R&D studies. That's why cooperations and collaborations matter. Of course, As long as the countries are not subject to common threat, they are not optimistic about having collaboration in the field of defense, because at the end of the day, the defense is actually a closed area for many countries, because most of the countries are not willing to go into cooperation and collaboration. For example, years ago, Turkey unfortunately has to finalize, actually cancel many cooperation and collaborative activities with many countries, because when it is defense, due to its nature, the collaboration and cooperation is not something many countries prefer. That's why countries and the defense companies are trying to develop the national systems rather than indulging in cooperations and collaborations. That's why, starting from the autonomous unmanned vehicle to national warships, Turkey has started developing its national industry. And I do believe that the local companies in Turkey will play even a greater part. The breakthrough technologies actually started to be developed in the defense industry, and then they are disseminated to other sectors. On the conventional side, the deterring impact of the equipments are really important, but right now we have the preemptive concept that we are employing. As countries try to deter each other from assaulting to each other by increasing their warfare equipments, on the preemptive side, we are trying to collect as many information and intel as possible, so that before the enemy attacks, we will be carrying out the preemptive strike to the enemy. Of course, this also changes the warfare concept. As a result, less men will be involved in the dangerous side, so that we will lose less men. Autonomous vehicle, I mean laser technologies, optic technologies, artificial intelligence and software, high speed communication, remote control and cybersecurity are among the top topics that we are focusing on right now. As Coşkun Holding, we are investing heavily to the unmanned vehicles. I mean unmanned vehicles which can land off vertically, and new shield technologies are among the fields in which we invest heavily. Of course, with the developing technologies, protecting the digital assets are also important. As a result, cybersecurity is one of the critical softwares for the defense industry. On the space side, the satellite technologies and increasing the speed on the broadband will be very important. That's why space will improve its importance. We know that, for example, launching satellites costed $200 million in the past, but right now it is dropping to the level of $60 million. That's why the importance of space in the defense industry will increase. And we know that the defense companies will be much more instrumental. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Akay. Thank you for giving us perspective of the private sector in development of the defense industry and where the future projects are moving. Thank you, Mr. Akay, for giving us perspective of the private industry and where are your future projects and how important is research and development and new technologies in defense industry. Now I would like to give a floor to General Valit. General Valit is the former Deputy Commander of United States European Command. He had a very distinguished military career that includes, among other things, Deputy Chief of Staff for Air and Space Operations at Pentagon. General Valit is Director and Senior Advisor to the Airspace and Defense Industry for Deloitte, and he's responsible for providing senior leadership in strategy and relationship with the defense contractors and the Department of Defense program executives.
Zoran, General Wald, not Walid. He deals with Middle East, but it's not Walid, it's Wald.
Well, Ole, sorry, sorry, General Wall, I'm sorry for mistake. General Wall serves as a co-leader for National Security Project and at the Bipartisan Policy Center. General Wall has received a number of awards and decoration. And sorry again, General, for mistaking your name.
Not a problem. I'd be honored to have the name Waleed. First of all, I'd like to compliment the previous speakers again, all great points, and it makes it easy for me because I think you've covered just about everything. But I'd like to kind of comment on a couple things and then reinforce a couple things. But first of all, somebody mentioned the reigning champion is starting to waver. I can tell you right now, the reigning champion in the world is not wavering one bit, and we're still punching above our weight. And that probably won't change for the near future. For example, I totally agree with the interoperability and commonality issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit, specifically the NATO issue. But last year, the United States military spent $60 billion on R&D. The total Turkish defense budget is $20 billion. So we in the United States obviously have our warts and deserve criticism at times. But the United States this year will spend $750 billion US on defense. And that brings us things like mobility and the ability to get to places in the world rapidly. As an example, we have over 500 air refueling tankers in our fleet. We have over 500 strategic airlift aircraft in our service. We have the ability to move rapidly around the world that nobody else has. For example, China has 54 strategic airlifters. They don't plan to mobilize any place. So from the standpoint of commonality of equipment and alliances, the United States, again, deserves a lot of criticism at times, but we're probably the only ones that can actually move a large force around the world in a rapid way, which would probably be a reinforcement of NATO if that were the case, and other places around the world. In 2003, when the United States invaded Iraq, which can arguably be called a mistake in some ways, but regardless, we did it. The United States military moved the equivalency of the entire city of San Antonio, every piece of furniture, all the offices and all the private homes to the Middle East. That just can't be done by anybody else. From the standpoint of interoperability, and somebody mentioned, again, alluding to the fact that China's on the rise, which I would agree with. Russia still is a problem. There are common threats there that I think only as a coalition are we going to be able to respond to that. If we're going to fight as a coalition, which we will, then we need to have equipment that works together for a lot of reasons. The sophistication of the command and control capabilities that we're going to require in the future are all based on high technology, significant technology that, as was mentioned by Lady Maitland, cyber is going to be a threat to that. We have processes in place in our U.S. military that we share with Five Eyes and other members of NATO on how to protect that interoperability. That's going to remain significant, and it's only going to increase as the importance of, as was mentioned a little bit ago, artificial intelligence and sophisticated interoperability for command and control is going to become even more important in the future. The other part about that people haven't mentioned from the standpoint of the importance of common equipment and common defense industries is the supply chain. The supply chain is significantly important, as everybody knows, and cyber, again, will be a threat to that, but also commonality of equipment is going to be important because of affordability. I know that there's been some discussion about a separate EU military capability. I would venture to say that's not going to be affordable to do that. And so there's a reality of what the threats are, who the common threats are, where the equipment is going to come from when we do have to fight together. And the fact is, like it or not, the United States is starting to focus on Asia because of the aforementioned China threat. That doesn't mean we're going to leave NATO, because we're not. Specifically, since President Biden now has decided that wasn't going to happen. But we're still going to have to focus on the threat from Russia in NATO. We're still going to have to focus on Middle East problems, which we're doing. And number three is we're going to have to increase our capability in the Pacific in a significant way. That's what a $750 billion defense budget is going to get us. From the standpoint of changing warfare that was alluded to again by Lady Maitland, and somebody else mentioned it, the United States Marine Corps, which is a fairly significant sized force, has decided to retire all their heavy armor tanks. They're going to, because of the fact that their belief in how the future warfare will be fought in the Pacific specifically, is they're going to have to move around a lot to defend themselves from an in-place threat that they could experience. So that for a service in the United States, a Marine Corps in this case, is a significant change in doctrine. And as was alluded to by several of the speakers, with the technologies that are coming on board today, space obviously is going to be a huge, significant part of everything we do. And the United States has a GPS, as you know, and the new GPS for us is 3M. It's called M code. And in that GPS, the United States military and government has the ability to turn off that GPS to everybody except the US military based on that code. Now, I don't see that happening, but on the other hand, I don't think there's anybody in this audience or any of these countries that would ever want to fight without a GPS. Now, there's other GPSs out there. There's Beidou and there's Galileo and there's Glasnost. But I can tell you that without getting into classified information, those systems are extremely vulnerable to being jammed. And the United States now has developed a capability to have a non-space-based terrestrial GPS that is basically proprietary. So the point I'm getting at is there's a lot of interest about sovereignty. We all care about that. There's a lot of interest about, there for a while, going it alone without the United States, becoming your own military capability in some cases from the standpoint of fighting without us. I think that would, that sounds good on paper, but I don't think it's going to happen. So again, I commend the title of this forum. I commend the interest of people to have common defense industries, but I also see it as a prerogative and it's something we're going to have to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, General, for your 30,000-foot look at the defense industry and developments in the world and also in US. Number of us, we have mentioned the new technologies, artificial intelligence, industrial revolution 4.0, 5G. And during one of the previous panels, it was a discussion and it was one question which was asked, how do you see the use of the technology? What kind of impact it will have? And one of the panelists answered, if it's in good hands, it's good, but if it's in bad hands, it's not good. What is your view from the defense point of view? Any of the panelists can give the answer. General? Okay.
Could you repeat the first part of the question? I didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
Okay. During the previous discussion at one of the panels, we were discussing about new technologies and about the usage of new technologies and how they can be used. And, you know, we discussed about artificial intelligence, about the new type of production facilities like Industrial Revolution 4.0 and so on. We are increasingly dependent on security of those systems, and sometimes those systems could be found in wrong hands. And one of the panelists answered the question that if the technology is in good hands, it's okay, but if the technology comes to bad hands, then we are having problems. How we can defend, how we can protect the systems what we are having in defense industry?
Well, I think it's a critical point. I think that as new systems and new technology is being developed, the threat of espionage or stealing that technology is a critical issue. I mean, it's this isn't a China bashing issue, but China, part of where they get a lot of their technology is through espionage or basically stealing information. And so we know that there's attempts at hacking into our industries all the time. The Pentagon has over 1 million attempted hacks on it every day, by the way, that most people don't realize. So industrial espionage is a huge issue. Some of these technologies are very unique. Again, as I said, the United States is spending $60 billion a year on research and development alone. And there's a lot of technology out there that's basically very classified, that's vulnerable because of the need for information technology and development of that. So I think there are standards in NATO, the STANAGs, that talk about how you share information, how you maintain information, who you can share it with, who gets it. And the transfer of technology is a critical issue that you have to put a lot of trust in your allies for. So I think, again, if you talk to the large OEMs, I'm sure their biggest concern is that somebody's going to steal their development technology. So I think we all have to be very, very cognizant of that. There's a lot of trust that comes in play when you start transferring some of these technologies to allies, even because of the fact that it is vulnerable to being stolen. So I don't think you can say enough about the point you just made, so I agree 100%.
Okay. Does someone else would like to add something from the panelists? Fatmir, you spoke about cooperation, especially regional cooperation for the countries like yours and mine. That's very important. And the concept of smart defense is key. Could you elaborate a little bit more on this topic? Is Fatmir on?
No, I think he may have left.
He may have left. Okay. Okay, maybe Mr. Akay could give us a view on the private sector view of how the smaller countries can combine their facilities, because we are in NATO and we have to be interoperable, how we can cooperate with industry in order to develop the joint programs, maintenance and upgrading of our equipment.
Thank you very much again. So when you take a look from the industry point of view, from Turkey's side, this is true that we are in a critical position, and we can, how can I say, as a member of NATO, we can contribute a lot to the different defense industries, how can I say, works and R&D developments. So from the other side, as you know, for F-35 project, we were part of this, and all of us, including Coşkun also, we invested a lot. But today we have some, how can I say, problems to continue on this one. So from the other side, Turkey is always a part of the Europe. Between Asia and Europe, we have a geopolitically important position. This is clear that we need to get as we need to get as a defense industry more participation to the development stage. Because of that, Turkey need today, we have seen that Turkey need today, we need to develop our own system to, how can I say, support our position in the defense and to support our correct, how can I say, relation with all our partners and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now it's close to the end. I would like to give to all of speakers 1 minute just to give their final thoughts on the issue. Your Excellency.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say, and this was said earlier this morning in a couple of sessions, that the pandemic that we are confronting today is not the reason of instability or uncertainty. It is in all probability the result of a systemic disorder that we are now confronting it. So for all of us, and we all are citizens of peace-loving, law-abiding states, we all like to say that, but for that to happen, we need to look again at the system that there is and to inject into it as a degree of justice, at the same time to remove from it the selectivity that unfortunately compromises the system's legitimacy and then forces actors, both de jure and de facto, to challenge it and to subvert it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. General?
First of all, I commend you on this forum. I think it's outstanding. I think the topic is very important. I agree with all the speakers' comments, especially the last one. And I'd just like to congratulate you on a very, very good forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General. And Mr. Akay? Okay. Thank you very much. I believe we are on a time. Just thank you for your participation and for your excellent exposés. Thank you.
General, thank you very much. And our distinguished panelists, thank you for joining us here on set. Well, we've made it, I can tell you that. This brings us to the end of day one of the 11th Bosphorus Summit, a different summit this year, of course. I'd like to thank all of our participants, but first and foremost, His Excellency, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, for delivering the honorary open speech. I'm sure, besides that, all of our esteemed panelists and speakers as well. I'm sure all of this talk has worked up some sort of appetite. So let's take a half an hour break. And if you would like to have some dinner, we'd like to invite you downstairs at 7:30 p.m. for a dinner, the opening dinner of the 11th Bosphorus Summit. Thank you. And we'll see you bright and early here tomorrow at 9:15. That's when everything kicks off. Thank you.